the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Adi Parva, Section 94, Sambhava Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O adorable one, I desire to hear the histories of those kings who were descended from Puru. O tell me of each as he was possessed of prowess and achievements. I have, indeed, heard that in Puru's line there was not a single who was wanting in good behavior and prowess, or who was without sons. O thou of ascetic wealth, I desire to hear the histories in detail of those famous monarchs endued with learning and all accomplishments. Vasampayana said, asked by thee I shall tell thee all about the heroic kings in Puru's line, all equal unto Indra in prowess, possessing great affluence and commanding the respect of all for their accomplishments. Puru had by his wife Poishti 3 sons, Pravira, Iswara, and Roydrasv, all of whom were mighty warriors. Amongst them, Pravira was the perpetrator of the dynasty. Pravira had by his wife Suresni a son named Mangobinda. And the latter of eyes like lotus petals had his sway over the whole earth bounded by the 4 seas, and Mangobinda had for his wife Saviri. And he begat upon her 3 sons called Sakta, Sahana, and Vagmi. And they were heroes in battle and mighty warriors. The intelligent and virtuous Koirasv begat upon the AF, Sara Misraksi 10 sons who were all great bowmen. And they all grew up into heroes, performing numerous sacrifices in honor of the gods. And they all had sons, were learned in all branches of knowledge and ever devoted to virtue. They are Richiyu, and Kaksbu and Vrikyu of great prowess, Standileyu, and Venu, and Jaleyu of great fame, Tejayu of great strength and intelligence, and Satyayu of the prowess of Indra, Dharmayu, and Sannatyu the 10th of the prowess of the celestials. Amongst them all, Richiyu became the sole monarch of the whole earth and was known by the name of Andrishti. And in prowess he was like unto Vasva amongst the celestials. And Andrishti had a son of the name of Matinara who became a famous and virtuous king and performed the Rajasuya and the horse sacrifice. And Matinara had 4 sons of immeasurable prowess, viz. Tansu, Mahat, Atirtha, and Drahu of immeasurable glory. Amongst them, Tansu of great prowess became the perpetrator of Puru's line. And he subjugated the whole earth and acquired great fame and splendor. And Tansu begat a son of great prowess named Ailina. And he became the foremost of all conquerors and brought the whole world under his subjection. And Ailina begat upon his wife Ratanthaya 5 sons with Dushmanta at their head, all equal in might unto the 5 elements. They were Dushmanta, Sura, Bhima, Pravashu, and Vasu. And, O Janamejaya, the eldest of them, Dushmanta, became king. And Dushmanta had by his wife Sakuntala an intelligent son named Bharata who became king. And Bharata gave his name to the race of which he was the founder. And it is from him that the fame of that dynasty hath spread so wide. And Bharata begat upon his 3 wives 9 sons in all. But none of them was like their father, and so Bharata was not at all pleased with them, their mothers, therefore became angry and slew them all. The procreation of children by Bharata, therefore, became vain. The monarch then performed a great sacrifice and through grace of Bharadwaja obtained a son named Gumanyu, and then Bharata, the great descendant of Puru, regarding himself as really possessing a son, installed, O foremost one of Bharata's race, that son as his heir apparent. And Gumenya begat upon his wife, Pushkarini 6 sons named Suhotra, Suhotri, Suhavi, Suyaju, and Deviratha. The eldest of them all, Suhotra, obtained the throne and performed many rajsuyas and horse sacrifice. And Suhotra brought under his sway the whole earth surrounded by her belt of seas and full of elephants, kin and horses, and all her wealth of gems of gold. And the earth afflicted with the weight of numberless human beings and elephants, horses, and cars, was, as it were, about to sink. And during the virtuous reign of Suhotra the surface of the whole earth was dotted all over with hundreds and thousands of sacrificial stakes, and the lord of earth, Suhotra, begat upon his wife Ikshaki 3 sons, viz., Ajamina, Sumida, and Purumida. The eldest of them, Ajamida, was the perpetrator of the royal line. And he begat 6 sons. Raiksha was born of the womb of Dhumini, Dusmanta and Permstin, of Nili, and Jahnu, Jala, and Rupina, were born in that of Keshini. All the tribes of the Panchalas are descended from Dusmanta and Permstin. And the Kushikas are the sons of Jahnu of immeasurable prowess. And Raiksha, who was older than both Jala and Rupina, became king. And Raiksha begat Samvarna, the perpetuator of the royal line. And, O king, it hath been heard by us that while Samvarna, the son of Raiksha, was ruling the earth, there happened a great loss of people from famine, pestilence, drought, and disease. And the Bharata princes were beaten by the troops of enemies. And the Panchalas setting out to invade the whole earth with their 4 kinds of troops soon brought the whole earth under their sway. And with their 10 Akshohinis the king of the Panchalas defeated the Bharata prince. Samvarna then with his wife and ministers, sons and relatives, fled in fear, and took shelter in the forest on the banks of the Sindhu extending to the foot of the mountains. There the Bharatas lived for a full 1,000 years, within their fort. And after they had lived there 1,000 years, one day the illustrious Rishi Vasishtha approached the exiled Bharatas, who, on going out, saluted the Rishi and worshipped him by the offer of Arghya. And entertaining him with reverence, they represented everything unto that illustrious Rishi. And after he was seated on his seat, the king himself approached the Rishi and addressed him, saying, Be thou our priest, O illustrious one, we will endeavor to regain our kingdom. And Vasistha answered the Bharatas by saying, Om, the sign of consent. It hath been heard by us that Vasistha then installed the Bharata prince in the sovereignty of all the Kshatriyas on earth, making by virtue of his mantras this descendant of Puru the veritable horns of the wild bull or the tusks of the wild elephant. And the king retook the capital that had been taken away from him and once more made all monarchs pay tribute to him. The powerful Samvarna, thus installed once more in the actual sovereignty of the whole earth, performed many sacrifices at which the presents to the Brahmanas were great. Samvarna begat upon his wife, Tapti, the daughter of Surya, a son named Kuru. This Kuru was exceedingly virtuous, therefore, he was installed on the throne by his people. It is after his name that the field called Kurujangala has become so famous in the world. Devoted to asceticism, he made that field, Kurukshetra, sacred by practicing asceticism there. And it has been heard by us that Kuru's highly intelligent wife, Vahini, brought forth 5 sons viz., Avikshit, Abhishyat, Chastrata, Muni, and the celebrated Janamejya. And Avikshit begat Parikshit the powerful, Savolasv, Adi Raja, Viraja, Balmali of great physical strength Uchaisravas, Bangakara and Jitri the 8th. In the race of these were born, as the fruit of their pious acts, 7 mighty car warriors with Janamejya at their head. And unto Parikshit were born sons who were all acquainted with the secrets of the religion and prophet. And they were named Kakshasena and Ugrasena, and Kritrasena endued with great energy, and Indrasena and Sushana and Bhimsena. And the sons of Janamejaya were all endued with great strength and became celebrated all over the world, and they were Dhritarashtra who was the eldest, and Pandu and Valhika, and Nishadha endued with great energy, and then the mighty Jamvunada, and then Kundodra and Patti, and then Vasti the eighth. And they were all proficient in morality and profit and were kind to all creatures. Among them Dhritarashtra became king. And Dhritarashtra had 8 sons viz. Kundika, Hasti, Vaitaka, Kratha the fifth, Havitsravas, Indrabha, and Bhumanyu the invincible, and Dhritarashtra had many grandsons, of whom 3 only were famous. They were, O king, Pratipa, Dharmanetra, Sunetra. Among these last 3, Pratipa became unrivaled on earth. And, O bull in Bharata's race, Pratipa begat 3 sons viz. Devapi, Santanu, and the mighty car warrior Valhika. The eldest Devapi adopted the ascetic course of life, impelled thereto by the desire of benefiting his brothers. And the kingdom was obtained by Santanu and the mighty car warrior Valhika. O monarch, besides, there were born in the race of Bharata numberless other excellent monarchs endued with great energy and like unto the celestial Rishis themselves in virtue and ascetic power. And so also in the race of Manu were born many mighty car warriors like unto the celestials themselves, who by their numbers swelled the AIA dynasty into gigantic proportions. So ends the 94th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 95, Sambhava Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O Brahmana, I have now heard from thee this great history of my ancestors. I had also heard from thee about the great monarchs that were born in this line. But I have not been gratified, this charming account being so short. Therefore, be pleased, O Brahmana, to recite the delightful narrative just in detail commencing from Manu, the Lord of creation. Who is there that will not be charmed with such an account, so as it is sacred? The fame of these monarchs increased by their wisdom, virtue, accomplishments, and high character, heart so swelled as to cover the 3 worlds. Having listened to the history, sweet as nectar, of their liberality, prowess, physical strength, mental vigor, energy, and perseverance, I have not been satiated. Vasampayana said, Hear then, O monarch, as I recite in full the auspicious account of thy own race just as I heard it from Dwaipanana before. Daksha begat Aditi, and Aditi begat Vivaswat, and Vivaswat begat Manu, and Manu begat Ila, and Ila begat Pururavas. And Pururavas begat Ayush, and Ayush begat Nahusha, and Nahusha begat Yayati. And Yayati had 2 wives, viz. Devyani, the daughter of Usnas, and Sarmishta the daughter of Vrishpavan. Here occurs a sloka regarding Yayati's descendants. Devyani gave birth to Yadu and Turvasu, and Vrishpavan's daughter, Sarmistha gave birth to Drahu, and Puru. And the descendants of Yadu are the Yadvas and of Puru are the Pauravas. And Puru had a wife of the name of Kausalya, on whom he begat a son named Janamejaya who performed 3 horse sacrifice and a sacrifice called Viswajit. And then he entered into the woods. And Janamejaya had married Ananta, the daughter of Madhava, and begat upon her a son called Prachimvat. And the prince was so called because he had conquered all the eastern countries up to the very confines of the region where the sun rises, and Prachimvat married Asmaki, a daughter of the Yadvas, and begat upon her a son named Sanyati. And Sanyati married Varangi, the daughter of Drishadvata, and begat upon her a son named Ahyanti. And Ahanyanti married Bhanumati, the daughter of Kritavirya, and begat upon her a son named Sarvabhuma. And Sarvabhuma married Sunanda, the daughter of the Kekya prince, having obtained her by force. And he begat upon her a son named Jayatsna, who married Susrava, the daughter of the Vidarbha king, and begat upon her Avachina. And Avachina also married another princess of Vidarbha, Maryada by name. And he begat on her a son named Arihan. And Arihan married Angi, and begat on her Mahabhoima. And Mahabhoima married Suja, the daughter of Prasenajit. And of her was born Ayuthanai. And he was so called because he had performed a sacrifice at which the fat of an Ayutha, 10,000s, of male beings was required. And Ayukni took for a wife Kama, the daughter of Prithusravas. And by her was born a son named Akrodhna, who took to wife Karamba, the daughter of the king of Kalinga. And of her was born Devatithi, and Devatithi took for his wife Maryada, the princess of Videha. And of her was born a son named Arihan. And Arihan took to wife Sudev, the princess of Anga, and upon her he begat a son named Raiksha. And Raiksha married Jwala, the daughter of Takshaka, and he begat upon her a son of the name of Matinara, who performed on the bank of Saraswati the 12 years sacrifice said to be so efficacious. On the conclusion of sacrifice, Saraswati appeared in person before the king and chose him for husband. And he begat upon her a son named Tangsu. Here occurs a sloka descriptive of Tangsu's descendants. Tangsu was born of Saraswati by Matinara. And Tangsu himself begat a son named Ailina on his wife, the princess Kalinga. Ailina begat on his wife Ratanteti 5 sons, of whom Dushmanta was the eldest. And Dushmanta took to wife Sakuntala, the daughter of Viswamitra. And he begat on her a son named Bharata. Here occurs 2 slokas about Dushmanta's descendants. The mother is but the sheath of flesh in which the father begets the son. Indeed, the father himself is the son. Therefore, O Dushmanta, support thy son and insult not Sakuntala. O God among men, the father himself becoming the son rescueth himself from hell. Sakuntala hath truly said that thou art the author of this child's being. It is for this, I see, because the king supported his child after hearing the above speech of the celestial messenger, that Sakuntala's son came to be called Bharata, the supported. And Bharata married Sunanda, the daughter of Sarvasena, the king of Kashi, and begat upon her the son named Bhumayu, and Bhumanyu married Vijaya, the daughter of Dasraha. And he begat upon her a son Suhotra, who married Suvarna, the daughter of Ikshaku. To her was born a son named Hasti, who founded this city, which has, therefore, been called Hastinapura. And Hasti married Yasodhara, the princess of Trigata. And of her was born a son named Vikunthana, who took for a wife Sudev, the princess of Da, Arha. And by her was born a son named Ajamida. And Ajamida had 4 wives named Raikeyi, Gandhari, Visala and Raiksha. And he begat on them 2,400 sons. But amongst them all, Samvan became the perpetuator of the dynasty. And Samvan took for his wife Tapti, the daughter of Vivaswat. And of her was born Kuru, who married Shubhangi, the princess of Dasraha. And he begat on her a son named Vidurtha, who took to wife Supriya, the daughter of the Madhavas. And he begat upon her a son named Anaswan. And Anaswan married Amrita, the daughter of the Madhavas. And of her was born a son named Parikshit, who took for his wife Suvasa, the daughter of the Vahudas, and begat upon her a son named Bhimsena. And Bhimsena married Kumari. the princess of Kekya, and begat upon her Partisravas, whose son was Pratipa. And Pratipa married Sunanda, the daughter of Sivi, and begat upon her 3 sons, 6%. T. Devapi, Santanu and Valhika. And Devapi, while still a boy, entered the woods as a hermit. And Santanu became king. Here occurs a sloka in respect of Santanu. Those old men that were touched by this monarch not only felt an indescribable sensation of pleasure but also became restored to youth. Therefore, this monarch was called Santanu. And Santanu married Ganga, who bore him a son Devavrata, who was afterwards called Bhishma. And Bhishma, moved by the desire of doing good to his father, got him married to Satyavati, who was also called Gangakli. And in her maidenhood she had a son by Parasra, named Dwaipayana. And upon her Santanu begat 2 other sons named Chittarangada and Vichitravirya. And before they attained to majority, Chittarangada had been slain by the Gandharvas. But Vichitravirya became king, and married the 2 daughters of the king of Kashi, named Amvika and Amvalika. But Vichitravirya died childless. Then Satyavati began to think as to how the dynasty of Dushmanta might be perpetuated. Then she recollected the Rishi Dwaipayana. The latter, coming before her, asked, "What are thy commands?" She said, "Thy brother Vichitravirya hath gone to heaven childless, I beget virtuous children for him." Dwaipayana, consenting to this, begat 3 children viz. Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. King Dhritarashtra had 100 sons by his wife Gandhari in consequence of the boon granted by Dwaipayana. And amongst those 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, 4 became celebrated. They are Duryodhana, Dussanana, Vikarna, and Chitrasena. And Pandu had 2 jewels of wives viz. Kunti, also called Pritha, and Madri. One day Pandu, while out hunting, saw a deer covering its mate. That was really a rishi in the form of a deer. Seeing the deer in that attitude, he killed it with his arrows, before its desire was gratified. Pierced with the king's arrow, the deer quickly changed its form and became a rishi, and said unto Pandu, "O Pandu, thou art virtuous and acquainted also with the pleasure derived from the gratification of one's desire. My desire unsatisfied, thou hast slain me. Therefore, thou also, when so engaged and before thou art gratified, shalt die." Pandu, hearing this curse, became pale, and from that time would not go in unto his wives. And he told them these words, "Through my own fault, I have been cursed. But I have heard that for the childless there are no regions hereafter." Therefore, he solicited Kunti to have offspring raised for him. And Kunti, saying, "Let it be," so raised up offspring. By Dharma she had Yudhishthira, by Manruta, Bhima, and by Sakra, Arjuna. And Pandu, well pleased with her, said, "This thy co-wife is also childless. Therefore, cause her also to bear children." Kunti saying, "So be it," imparted unto Madri the mantra of invocation. And on Madri were raised by the twin Aswins, the twins Nakula and Sahdeva. And, one day, Pandu, beholding Madri decked with ornaments, had his desire kindled. And, as soon as he touched her, he died. Madri ascended the funeral pyre with her lord. And she said unto Kunti, "Let these twins of mine be brought up by thee with affection." After some time those 5 Pandavas were taken by the ascetics of the woods to Hastinapura and there introduced to Bhishma and Vidura. And after introducing them, the ascetics disappeared in the very sight of all. And after the conclusion of the speech of those ascetics, flowers were showered down upon the spot, and the celestial drums also were beaten in the skies. The Pandavas were then taken by Bhishma. They then represented the death of their father and performed his last honors duly. And as they were brought up there, Duryodhana became exceedingly jealous of them. And the sinful Duryodhana, acting like Rakshasa, tried various means to drive them away. But what must be can never be frustrated. So all Duryodhana's efforts proved futile. Then Dhritarashtra sent them, by an act of deception, to Varnabhata, and they went there willingly. There an endeavor was made to burn them to death, but it proved abortive owing to the warning counsels of Vidura. After that the Pandavas slew Hidimvan, and then they went to a town called Ekachakra. There also they slew a Rakshasa of the name Raka and then went to Panchala. And there obtaining Draupadi for a wife they returned to Hastinapura. And there they dwelt for some time in peace and begat children. And Yudhishthira begat Prithivindra, Bhima, Sutasoma, Arjuna, Srutakriti, Nakula, Satanika, and Sahdeva, Srikarman. Besides these, Yudhishthira, having obtained for his wife Devika, the daughter of Gavashana of the C.I.E tribe, in a self-choice ceremony, begat upon her a son named Yodaya. And Bhima also obtaining for a wife Valandhara, the daughter of the king of Kashi, offered his own prowess as dower and begat upon her a son named Sarvaga. And Arjuna also, repairing to Dwaravati, brought away by force Subhadra, the sweet-speeched sister of Vasudeva, and returned in happiness to Hastinapura. And he begat upon her a son named Abhimanyu, endued with all accomplishments and dear to Vasudeva himself. And Nakula obtaining for his wife Kanumati, the princess of Chedi, begat upon her a son named Niramitra. And Sahdeva also married Vijaya, the daughter of Dyutimat, the king of Madra, obtaining her in a self-choice ceremony and begat upon her a son named Suhotra. And Bhimsena had some time before begat upon Hidimvan a son named Gatotkacha. These are the 11 sons of the Pandavas. Amongst them all, Abhimanyu was the perpetuator of the family. He married Uttara, the daughter of Virata, who brought forth a dead child whom Kunti took up on her lap at the command of Vasudeva, who said, "I will revive this child of 6 months." And though born before time, having been burned by the fire of Aswatthama's weapon and, therefore, deprived of strength and energy, he was revived by Vasudeva and endued with strength, energy and prowess. And after reviving him, Vasudeva said, "Because this child hath been born in an extinct race, therefore, he shall be called Pankshit." And Parikshit married Madravati, thy mother, O king, and thou art born to her, O Janamejaya. Thou hast also begotten 2 sons on thy wife of Vapushtama, named Satanika and Sankukarn. And Satanika also hath begotten 1 son named Ashwamedakta upon the princes of Videha. Thus have I, O king, recited the history of the descendants of Puru and of the Pandavas. This excellent, virtue-increasing, and sacred history should ever be listened to by vow-observing Brahmanas, by Kshatris devoted to the practices of their order and ready to protect their subjects, by Vaisyas with attention, and by Sudras with reverence, whose chief occupation is to wait upon the 3 other orders. Brahmanas conversant in the Vedas and other persons, who with attention and reverence recite this sacred history or listen to it when recited, conquer the heavens and attain to the abode of the blessed. They are also always respected and adored by the gods, Brahmanas, and other men. This holy history of Bharata hath been composed by the sacred and illustrious Vyasa. Veda-knowing Brahmanas and other persons who with reverence and without malice hear it are seated, earn great religious merits and conquer the heavens. Though sinning, they are not disregarded by anyone. Here occurs a sloka. This, Bharata, is equal unto the Vedas, it is holy and excellent. It bestowed wealth, fame, and life. Therefore, it should be listened to by men with rapt attention. Thus ends the 95th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva, the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 96, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, there was a king known by the name of Mahabharat born in the race of Ikshaku. He was the lord of all the earth, and was truthful, in speech, and of true prowess. By 1,000 horse sacrifices and 100 rajsuyas he had gratified the chief of the celestials and ultimately attained to heaven. One day the celestials had assembled together and were worshipping Brahman. Many royal sages and King Mahabharat also were present on the spot. And Ganga, the queen of rivers, also came there to pay her adorations to the grandsire. And her garments white as the beams of the moon was displaced by the action of the wind. And as her person became exposed, the celestials bent down their heads, but the royal sage Mahabharat rudely stared at the queen of rivers. And Mahabharat was for this cursed by Brahman, who said, Wretch, as thou hast forgotten thyself at the sight of Ganga, thou shalt be reborn on earth. But thou shalt again and again attain to these regions. And she, too, shall be born in the world of men and shall do thee injuries. But when thy wrath shall be provoked, thou shalt then be freed from my curse. Vasampayana continued. King Mahabharat then, recollecting all the monarchs and ascetics on earth, wished to be born as son to Pratibha of great prowess. And the queen of rivers, too, seeing King Mahabharat lose his firmness, went away, thinking of him wishfully. And on her way, she saw those dwellers in heaven, the Vasas, also pursuing the same path, and the queen of rivers, beholding them in the predicament, asked them, Why look ye so dejected? Ye dwellers in heaven, is everything right with you? Those celestials, the Vasas, answered her, saying, O queen of rivers, we have been cursed, for a venial fault, by the illustrious Vasishtha in anger. The foremost of excellent Rishi, Vasishtha, had been engaged in his twilight adorations, and seated as he was, he could not be seen by us. We crossed him in ignorance. Therefore, in wrath he hath cursed us, saying, Be ye born among men. It is beyond our power to frustrate what hath been said by that utterer of Brahma. Therefore, O river, thyself becoming a human female, make us the Vasas, thy children. O amiable one, we are unwilling to enter the womb of any human female. Thus addressed, the queen of rivers told them, Be it so, and asked them, On earth, who is that foremost of men whom ye will make your father? The Vasas replied, On earth, unto Pratibha shall be born a son, Santanu, who will be a king of worldwide fame. Ganga then said, Ye celestials, that is exactly my wish which ye sinless ones have expressed. I shall, indeed, do good to that Santanu. That is also your desire as just expressed. The Vasas then said, It behoveth thee to throw thy children, after birth, into the water, so that, O thou of three courses, celestial, terrestrial, and subterranean, we may be rescued soon without having to live on earth for any length of time. Ganga then answered, I shall do what ye desire. But in order that his intercourse with me may not be entirely fruitless, provide ye that one son at least may live. The Vasas then replied, We shall each contribute an eighth part of our respective energies. With the sum thereof, thou shalt have one son according to thy and his wishes. But this son shall not beget any children on earth. Therefore, that son of thine endued with great energy, shall be childless. The Vasis, making this arrangement with Ganga, went away without waiting to the place they liked. Thus ends the 96th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva, the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 97, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, there was a king of the name of Pratipa, who was kind to all creatures. He spent many years in ascetic penances at the source of the river Ganga. The accomplished and lovely Ganga, one day, assuming the form of a beautiful female, and rising from the waters, made up to the monarch. The celestial maiden, endued with ravishing beauty, approached the royal sage engaged in ascetic austerities, and sat upon his right thigh that was, for manly strength, a veritable sala tree. When the maiden of handsome face had so sat upon his lap, the monarch said unto her, O amiable one, what dost thou desire? What shall I do? The damsel answered, I desire thee, O king, for my husband. O foremost one of the Kurus, be mine. To refuse a woman coming of her own accord is never applauded by the wise. Pratipa answered, O thou of the fairest complexion, moved by lust, I never go in unto others' wives or women that are not of my order. This, indeed, is my virtuous vow. The maiden rejoined, I am not inauspicious or ugly. I am every way worthy of being enjoyed. I am a celestial maiden of rare beauty, I desire thee for my husband. Refuse me not, O king. To this Pratipa answered, I am, O damsel, abstaining from that course to which thou wouldst incite me. If I break my vow, sin will overwhelm and kill me. O thou of the fairest complexion, thou hast embraced me, sitting on my right thigh. But, O timid one, know that this is the seat for daughters and daughters-in-law. The left lap is for the wife, but thou hast not accepted that. Therefore, O best of women, I cannot enjoy thee as an object of desire. Be my daughter-in-law. I accept thee for my son. The damsel then said, O virtuous one, let it be as thou sayest. Let me be united with thy son. From my respect for thee, I shall be a wife of the celebrated Bharata race. Yea, of the Bharata race, are the refuge of all the monarchs on earth. I am incapable of numbering the virtues of this race even within 100 years. The greatness and goodness of many celebrated monarchs of this race are limitless. O Lord of all, let it be understood now that when I become thy daughter-in-law, thy son shall not be able to judge of the propriety of my acts. Living thus with thy son, I shall do good to him and increase his happiness. And he shall finally attain to heaven in consequence of the sons I shall bear him, and of his virtues and good conduct. Vasampayana continued till the 4 O king. Having said so, the celestial damsel disappeared then and there. And the king, too, waited for the birth of his son in order to fulfill his promise. About this time Pratipa, that light of the Kuru race, that bull amongst Kshatriyas, was engaged, along with his wife, in austerities from desire of offspring. And when they had grown old, a son was born unto them. This was no other than Mahavrisha, and the child was called Santanu because he was born when his father had controlled his passions by ascetic penances, and the best of Kurus, Santanu, knowing that region of indestructible bliss can be acquired by one's deeds alone, being devoted to virtue. When Santanu grew up into a youth, Pratipa addressed him and said, Some time before, O Santanu, a celestial damsel came to me for thy good. If thou meetest that fair complexioned one in secret, and if she solicit thee for children, accept her as thy wife. And, O sinless one, judge not of the propriety or impropriety of her action, and ask not who she is, or whose or whence, but accept her as thy wife at my command. I, Vasampayana continued, Pratipa, having thus commanded his son Santanu and installed him on his throne, retired into the woods, and King Santanu, endued with great intelligence and equal unto Indra himself in splendor, became addicted to hunting and passed much of his time in the woods. And the best of monarchs always slew deer and buffaloes. And one day, as he was wandering along the bank of the Ganges, he came upon a region frequented by Siddhas and Charanas. And there he saw a lovely maiden of blazing beauty, and like unto another Shri herself, of faultless and pearly teeth, and decked with celestial ornaments, and attired in garments of fine texture that resembled in splendor the filaments of the lotus. And the monarch, on beholding that damsel, became surprised, and his raptures produced instant horripilation. With steadfast gaze he seemed to be drinking her charms, but repeated draughts failed to quench his thirst. The damsel also, beholding the monarch of blazing splendor moving about in great agitation, was moved herself and experienced an affection for him. She gazed and longed to gaze on him evermore. The monarch then in soft words addressed her and said, O slender-waisted one, be thou a goddess or the daughter of a Danva, be thou of the race of the Kandavas, or Apsaras, be thou of the Yakshas or the Nagas, or be thou of human origin, O thou of celestial beauty, I solicit thee to be my wife. I. Thus ends the 97th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 98, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, the maiden then, hearing those soft and sweet words of the smiling monarch, and remembering her promise to the Vasis, addressed the king in reply. Of faultless feature, the damsel, sending a thrill of pleasure into the heart by every word she uttered, said, O king, I shall become thy wife and obey thy commands. But, O monarch, thou must not interfere with me in anything I do, be agreeable or disagreeable. Nor shalt thou ever address me unkindly. As long as thou shalt behave kindly, I promise to live with thee. But I shall certainly leave thee the moment thou interferest with me or speakest to me an unkind word. The king answered, Be it so. And thereupon the damsel, obtaining that excellent monarch, that foremost one of the Bharata race, for her husband, became highly pleased. And King Santanu also, obtaining her for his wife, enjoyed to the full the pleasure of her company. And adhering to his promise, he refrained from asking her anything. And the Lord of Earth, Santanu, became exceedingly gratified with her conduct, beauty, magnanimity, and attention to his comforts. And the goddess Ganga also, of three courses, celestial, terrestrial, and subterranean, assuming a human form of superior complexion and endued with celestial beauty, lived happily as the wife of Santanu, having as the fruit of her virtuous acts, obtained for her husband, that tiger among kings equal unto Indra himself in splendor. And she gratified the king by her attractiveness and affection, by her wiles and love, by her music and dance, and became herself gratified. And the monarch was so enraptured with his beautiful wife that months, seasons, and years rolled on without his being conscious of them. And the king, while thus enjoying himself with his wife, had 8 children born unto him who in beauty were like the very celestial themselves. But, O Bharata, those children, one after another, as soon as they were born, were thrown into the rivet by Ganga, who said, This is for thy good. And the children sunk to rise no more. The king, however, could not be pleased with such conduct. But he spoke not a word about it lest his wife should leave him. But when the 8th child was born, and when his wife as before was about to throw it smilingly into the river, the king with a sorrowful countenance and desirous of saving it from destruction, addressed her and said, "Kill it not. Who art thou and whose? Why dost thou kill thy own children? Murderess of thy sons, the load of thy sins is Gt. His wife, thus addressed, replied, "O thou desirous of offspring, thou hast already become the first of those that have children. I shall not destroy this child of thine. But according to our agreement, the period of my stay with thee is at an end. I am Ganga, the daughter of Janhu. I am ever worshipped by the great sages. I have lived with thee so long for accomplishing the purposes of the celestials." The 8 illustrious verses endued with great energy had, from Vasishtha's curse, to assume human forms on earth. Besides thee, there was none else to deserve the honor of being their begetter. There is no woman also on earth except one like me, a celestial of human form, to become their mother. I assumed a human form to bring them forth. Thou also, having become the father of the 8 verses, hast acquired many regions of perennial bliss. It was also agreed between myself and the verses that I should free them from their human forms as soon as they would be born. I have thus freed them from the curse of the Rishi Apava. Blessed be thou, I leave thee, O king. But rear thou this child of rigid woes, that I should live with thee, so long was the promise I gave to the verses. And let this child be called Gangadukta. Thus ends the 98th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 99, Sambhava Parva continued. Santanu asked, what was the fault of the verses and who was Apava, through whose curse the verses had to born among men? What also hath this child of thine, Gangadukta, done for which he shall have to live among men? Why also were the verses, the lords of the 3 worlds, condemned to be born amongst men? O daughter of Janhu, tell me all. Vasampayana continued. Thus addressed, the celestial daughter of Janhu, Ganga, then replied unto the monarch, her husband, that bull amongst men, saying, O best of Bharata's race, he who was obtained as son by Varuna was called Vasishtha, the Muni who afterwards came to be known as Apava. He had his asylum on the breast of the king of mountains called Meru. The spot was sacred and abounded with birds and beasts. And there bloomed at all times of the year flowers of every season. And O best of Bharata's race, that foremost of virtuous men, the son of Varuna, practiced his ascetic penances in those woods abounding with sweet roots and water. Daksha had a daughter known by the name of Surbhi, who, O bull of Bharata's race, for benefiting the world, brought forth, by her connection with Kasyapa, a daughter, Nandini, in the form of a cow. That foremost of all kin, Nandini, was the cow of plenty, capable of granting every desire. The virtuous son of Varuna obtained Nandini for his Homa rites. And Nandini, dwelling in that hermitage which was adored by Munis, roamed about fearlessly in those sacred and delightful woods. One day, O bull of Bharata's race, there came into those woods adored by the gods and celestial rishis, the Vasis with Prithu at their head. And wandering there with their wives, they enjoyed themselves in those delightful woods and mountains. And as they wandered there, the slender-waisted wife of one of the Vasis, O thou of the prowess of Indra, saw in those woods Nandini, the cow of plenty. And seeing that cow possessing the wealth of all accomplishments, large eyes, full udders, fine tail, beautiful hoofs, and every other auspicious sign, and yielding much milk, she showed the animal to her husband Dior. O thou of the prowess of the first of elephants, when Dior was shown that cow, he began to admire her several qualities and addressing his wife, said, O black-eyed girl of fair thighs, this excellent cow belongeth to that rishi whose is this delightful asylum. O slender-waisted one, that mortal who drinketh the sweet milk of this cow remaineth in unchanged youth for 10,000 years. O best of monarchs, hearing this, the slender-waisted goddess of faultless feature then addressed her lord of blazing splendor and said, There is on earth a friend of mine, Jitwati by name, possessed of great beauty and youth. She is the daughter of that god among men, the royal sage Yushinara, endued with intelligence and devoted to truth. I desire to have this cow, O illustrious one, with her calf for that friend of mine. Therefore, O best of celestials, bring that cow so that my friend drinking of her milk may alone become on earth free from disease and decrepitude. O illustrious and blameless one, it behoveth thee to grant me this desire of mine. There is nothing that would be more agreeable to me. On hearing these words of his wife, Dior, moved by the desire of humoring her, stole that cow, aided by his brothers Prithu and the others. Indeed, Dior, commanded by his lotus-eyed wife, did her bidding, forgetting at the moment the high ascetic merits of the rishi who owned her. He did not think at the time that he was going to fall by committing the sin of stealing the cow. When the son of Varuna returned to his asylum in the evening with fruits he had collected, he beheld not the cow with her calf there. He began to search them in the woods, but when the great ascetic of superior intelligence found not his cow on search, he saw by his ascetic vision that she had been stolen by the Vasis. His wrath was instantly kindled and he cursed the Vasis, saying, Because the Vasis have stolen my cow of sweet milk and handsome tail, therefore, shall they certainly be born on earth if, O thou bull of Bharata's race, the illustrious Rishi Apavatus cursed the Vasis in wrath. And having cursed them the illustrious one set his heart once more on ascetic meditation. And after that Brahmarshi of great power and ascetic wealth had thus in wrath cursed the Vasis, the latter, O king, coming to know of it, speedily came into his asylum. And addressing the Rishi, O bull among kings, they endeavored to pacify him. But they failed, O tiger among men, to obtain grace from Apava that Rishi conversant with all rules of virtue. The virtuous Apava, however, said, Ye Vasis, with Dhava and others, ye have been cursed by me but ye shall be freed from my curse within a year of your birth among men. But he for whose deed ye have been cursed by me he Dior, shall for his sinful act, have to dwell on earth for a length of time. I shall not make futile the words I have uttered in wrath. Dior, though dwelling on earth, shall not beget children. He shall, however, be virtuous and conversant with the scriptures. He shall be an obedient son to his father, but he shall have to abstain from the pleasure of female companionship. Thus addressing the Vasis, the great Rishi went away. The Vasis then together came to me. And, O king, they begged of me the boon that as soon as they would be born, I should throw them into the water. And, O best of kings, I did as they desired, in order to free them from their earthly life. And O best of kings, from the Rishi's curse, this one only, viz. Dior himself, is to live on earth for some time. Vasampayana continued, having said this, the goddess disappeared then and there. And taking with her the child, she went away to the region she chose. And that child of Santanu was named both Gangeya and Devavrata and excelled his father in all accomplishments. Santanu, after the disappearance of his wife, returned to his capital with a sorrowful heart. I shall now recount to thee the many virtues and the great good fortune of the illustrious King Santanu of the Bharata race. Indeed, it is this splendid history that is called the Mahabharat. Thus ends the 99th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 100, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, the monarch Santanu, the most adored of the gods and royal sages, was known in all the worlds for his wisdom, virtues, and truthfulness of speech. The qualities of self-control, liberality, forgiveness, intelligence, modesty, patience and superior energy ever dwelt in that bull among men, viz. Santanu, that great being endued with these accomplishments and conversant with both religion and profit. The monarch was at once the protector of the Bharata race and all human beings. His neck was marked with 3 lines like a conch shell, his shoulders were broad, and he resembled in prowess an infuriate elephant. It would seem that all the auspicious signs of royalty dwelt in his person, considering that to be their fittest abode. Men, seeing the behavior of that monarch of great achievements, came to know that virtue was ever superior to pleasure and profit. These were the attributes that dwelt in that great being, that bull among men Santanu. And truly there was never a king like Santanu. All the kings of the earth, beholding him devoted to virtue, bestowed upon that foremost of virtuous men the title of King of Kings. And all the kings of the earth during the time of that Lord Protector of the Bharata race, were without woe and fear and anxiety of any kind. And they all slept in peace, rising from bed every morning after happy dreams. And owing to that monarch of splendid achievements resembling Indra himself in energy, all the kings of the earth became virtuous and devoted to liberality, religious acts and sacrifices. And when the earth was ruled by Santanu and other monarchs like him, the religious merits of every order increased very greatly. The Kshatriyas served the Brahmins. The Vaisyas waited upon the Kshatriyas, and the Sudras adoring the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas, waited upon the Vaisyas. And Samanu residing in Hastinapura, the delightful capital of the Kurus, ruled the whole earth bounded by seas. He was truthful and guileless, and like the king of the celestials himself conversant with the dictates of virtue. And from the combination in him of liberality, religion and asceticism, he acquired a great good fortune. He was free from anger and malice, and was handsome in person like Soma himself. In splendor he was like the sun, and in impetuosity of valor like Vayu. In wrath he was like Yam, and in patience like the earth. And, O king, while Santanu ruled the earth, no deer, boars, birds, or other animals were needlessly slain. In his dominions the great virtue of kindness to all creatures prevailed, and the king himself, with the soul of mercy, and void of desire and wrath, extended equal protection unto all creatures. Then sacrifices in honor of the gods, the rishis, and Pitris commenced, and no creature was deprived of life sinfully. And Santanu was the king and father of all of those that were miserable and those that had no protectors, of birds and beasts, in fact, of every created thing. And during the rule of the best of Kurus of that king of kings, speech became united with truth, and the minds of men were directed towards liberality and virtue. And Santanu, having enjoyed domestic felicity for 36 years, retired into the woods. And Santanu's son, the Vasu born of Ganga, named Devavrata, resembled Santanu himself in personal beauty, in habits and behavior, and in learning. And in all branches of knowledge, worldly or spiritual, his skill was very great. His strength and energy were extraordinary. He became a mighty warrior. In fact, he was a great king. One day, while pursuing along the banks of the Ganges a deer that he had struck with his arrow, King Santanu observed that the river had become shallow. On observing this, that hull among men, viz. Santanu, began to reflect upon this strange phenomenon. He mentally asked why that first of rivers ran out so quickly as before. And while seeking for a cause, the illustrious monarch beheld that a youth of great comeliness, well-built and amiable person, like Indra himself, had, by his keen celestial weapons, checked the flow of the river. And the king, beholding this extraordinary feat of the river Ganga having been checked in her course near where that youth stood, became very much surprised. This youth was no other than Santanu's son himself. But, as Santanu had seen his son only once a few moments after his birth, he had not sufficient recollection to identify that infant with the youth before his eyes. The youth, however, seeing his father, knew him at once, but instead of disclosing himself, he clouded the king's perception by his celestial powers of illusion and disappeared in his very sight. King Santanu, wondering much at what he saw and imagining the youth to be his own son, then addressed Ganga and said, "Show me that child." Ganga, thus addressed, assuming a beautiful form, and holding the boy decked with ornaments in her right arm, showed him to Santanu. And Santanu did not recognize that beautiful female bedecked with ornaments and attired in fine robes of white, although he had known her before. And Ganga said, "O tiger among men, that eighth son whom thou hadst some time before begot upon me is this. Know that this excellent child is conversant with all weapons. O monarch, take him now. I have reared him with care. And go home, O tiger among men, taking him with thee. Endued with superior intelligence, he has studied with Vasishtha the entire Vedas with their branches. Skilled in all weapons and a mighty bowman, he is like Indra in battle. And, O Bharata, both the gods and the asuras look upon him with favor. Whatever branches of knowledge are known to Usnas, this one knoweth completely. And so is he the master of all those sastras that the son of Angiras, Brihaspati, adored by the gods and the asuras knoweth. And all the weapons known to the powerful and invincible Rama, the son of Jamodagni, are known to this thy illustrious son of mighty arms. O king of superior courage, take this thy own heroic child given unto thee by me. He is mighty bowman and conversant with the interpretation of all treatises on the duties of a king." Thus commanded by Ganga, Santanu took his child resembling the sun himself in glory and returned to his capital. And having reached his city that was like unto the celestial capital, that monarch of Puru's line regarded himself greatly fortunate. And having summoned all the Pauravas together, for the protection of his kingdom he installed his son as his heir apparent and associated on the throne. And O bull of Bharata's race, the prince, soon gratified by his behavior of his father and the other members of the Paurava race, in fact, all the subjects of the kingdom, and the king of incomparable prowess lived happily with that son of his. 4 years had thus passed away, when the king one day went into the woods on the bank of the Yamuna, and while the king was rambling there, he perceived a sweet scent coming from an unknown direction. And the monarch, impelled by the desire of ascertaining the cause, wandered hither and thither. And in course of his ramble, he beheld a black-eyed maiden of celestial beauty, the daughter of a fisher. The king, addressing her, said, "Who art thou, and whose daughter? What dost thou do here, O timid one?" She answered, "Blessed be thou. I am the daughter of the chief of the fishermen. At his command, I am engaged for religious merit, in rowing passengers across this river in my boat." And Santanu, beholding that maiden of celestial form endued with beauty, amiableness, and such fragrance, desired her for his wife. And repairing unto her father, the king solicited his consent to the proposed match. But the chief of the fishermen replied to the monarch, saying, "O king, as soon as my daughter of superior complexion was born, it was, of course, understood that she should be bestowed upon a husband. But listen to the desire I have cherished all along in my heart. O sinless one, thou art truthful. If thou desirest to obtain this maiden as a gift from me, give me then this pledge. If, indeed, thou givest the pledge, I will of course bestow my daughter upon thee, for truly I can never obtain a husband for her equal to thee." Santanu, hearing this, replied, "When I have heard of the pledge thou askest, I shall then say whether I would be able to grant it. If it is capable of being granted, I shall certainly grant it. Otherwise how shall I grant it?" The fisherman said, "O king, what I ask of thee is this: the son born of this maiden shall be installed by thee on thy throne, and none else shalt thou make thy successor." Vasampayana continued, "O Bharata, when Santanu heard this, he felt no inclination to grant such a boon, though the fire of desire sorely burned him within. The king, with his heart afflicted by desire, returned to Hastinapura, thinking all the way of the fisherman's daughter. And having returned home, the monarch passed his time in sorrowful meditation. One day, Devavrata, approaching his afflicted father, said, "All is prosperity with thee, all chiefs obey thee, then how is it that thou grievest thus? Absorbed in thy own thoughts, thou speakest not a word to me in reply. Thou goest not out on horseback now, thou lookest pale and emaciated, having lost all animation. I wish to know the disease thou sufferest from, so that I may endeavor to apply a remedy." Thus addressed by his son, Santanu answered, "Thou sayest truly, O son, that I have become melancholy. I will also tell thee why I am so. O thou of Bharata's line, thou art the only scion of this our large race. Thou art always engaged in sports of arms and achievements of prowess. But, O son, I am always thinking of the instability of human life. If any danger overtake thee, O child of Ganga, the result is that we become sonless. Truly thou alone art to me as a century of sons. I do not, therefore, desire to wed again. I only desire and pray that prosperity may ever attend on thee, so that our dynasty may be perpetuated. The wise say that he that hath one son hath no son. Sacrifices before fire and the knowledge of the three Vedas yield, it is true, everlasting religious merit, but all these, in point of religious merit, do not come up to a 16th part of the religious merit attainable on the birth of a son. Indeed, in this respect, there is hardly any difference between men and the lower animals. O wise one, I do not entertain a shadow of doubt that one attains to heaven in consequence of his having begotten a son. The Vedas, which constitute the root of the Puranas and are regarded as authoritative even by the gods, contain numerous proof of this. O thou of Bharata's race, thou art a hero of excitable temper, who is always engaged in the exercise of arms. It is very probable that thou wilt be slain on the field of battle. If it so happen what then will be the state of the Bharata dynasty? It is this thought that hath made me so melancholy. I have now told thee fully the causes of my sorrow. Vasampayana continued, Devavrata, who was endued with great intelligence, having ascertained all this from the king, reflected within himself for a while. He then went to the old minister devoted to his father's welfare and asked him about the cause of the king's grief. O bull of Bharata's race, when the prince questioned the minister, the latter told him about the boon that was demanded by the chief of the fishermen in respect of his daughter Gandhavati. Then Devavrata, accompanied by many Kshatriya chiefs of venerable age, personally repaired to the chief of the fishermen and begged of him his daughter on behalf of the king. The chief of the fishermen received him with due adorations, and O thou of Bharata's race, when the prince took his seat in the court of the chief, the latter addressed him and said, O bull among the Bharatas, thou art the first of all wielders of weapons and the only son of Santanu. Thy power is great. But I have something to tell thee. If the bride's father was Indra himself, even then he would have to repent of rejecting such an exceedingly honorable and desirable proposal of marriage. The great man of whose seed this celebrated maiden named Satyavati was born, is, indeed, equal to you in virtue. He hath spoken to me on many occasions of the virtues of thy father, and told me that the king alone is worthy of marrying Satyavati. Let me tell you that I have even rejected the solicitations of that best of Brahmarshis, the celestial sage Asita, who, too, had often asked for Satyavati's hand in marriage. I have only one word to say on the part of this maiden. In the matter of the proposed marriage there is one great objection founded on the fact of a rival in the person of a co-wife's son. O oppressor of all foes, he hath no security, even if he be an Asura or a Kanfiyava, who hath a rival in the eye. There is this only objection to the proposed marriage, and nothing else. Blessed be thou. But this is all I have to say in the matter of the bestowal or otherwise, of Satyavati. Vasampayana continued, O thou of Bharata's race, Devavrata, having heard these words, and moved by the desire of benefiting his father, thus answered in the hearing of the assembled chiefs, O foremost of truthful men, listen to the vow I utter. The man has not been or will not be born, who will have the courage to take such a vow. I shall accomplish all that thou demandest. The son that may be born of this maiden shall be our king. Thus addressed, the chief of the fishermen, impelled by desire of sovereignty, for his daughter's son, to achieve the almost impossible, then said, O thou of virtuous soul, thou art come hither as full agent on behalf of thy father Santanu of immeasurable glory. Be thou also the sole manager on my behalf in the matter of the bestowal of this my daughter. But O amiable one, there is something else to be said, something else to be reflected upon by thee. O suppressor of foes, those that have daughters, from the very nature of their obligations, must say what I say. O thou that art devoted to truth, the promise thou hast given in the presence of these chiefs for the benefit of Satyavati hath, indeed, been worthy of thee. O thou of mighty arms, I have not the least doubt of its ever being violated by thee. But I have my doubts in respect of the children thou mayest beget. Vasampayana continued, O king, the son of Ganga, devoted to truth, having ascertained the scruples of the chief of the fishermen, then said, moved thereto by the desire of benefiting his father, chief of fishermen, thou best of men, listen to what I say in the presence of these assembled kings. Ye kings, I have already relinquished my right to the throne, I shall now settle the matter of my children. O fishermen, From this day I adopt the vow of brahmacharya, study and meditation in celibacy. If I die sunless, I shall yet attain to regions of perennial bliss in heaven. Vasampayana continued, upon these words of the son of Ganga, hair on the fisherman's body stood on end from glee, and he replied, I bestow my daughter. Immediately after, the Apsaras and the gods with diverse tribes of rishis began to rain down flowers from the firmament upon the head of Devavrata and exclaimed, This one is Bhishma, the terrible. Bhishma then, to serve his father, addressed the illustrious damsel and said, O mother, ascend this chariot, and let us go unto our house. Vasampayana continued, having said this, Bhishma helped the beautiful maiden into his chariot. On arriving with her at Hastinapura, he told Santanu everything as it had happened. And the assembled kings, jointly and individually, applauded his extraordinary act and said, He is really Bhishma, the terrible. And Santanu also, hearing of the extraordinary achievements of his son, became highly gratified and bestowed upon the high-souled prince the boon of death at will, saying, Death shall never come to thee as long as thou desirest to live. Truly death shall approach thee, O sinless one, having first obtained thy command. Thus ends the 100th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 101, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, O monarch, after the nuptials were over, King Santanu established his beautiful bride in his household. Soon after was born of Satyavati an intelligent and heroic son of Santanu named Chitrangada. He was endued with great energy and became an eminent man. The Lord Santanu of great prowess also begat upon Satyavati another son named Vichitravirya, who became a mighty bowman and who became king after his father. And before that bull among men, 6. Vichitravirya, attained to majority, the wise king Santanu realized the inevitable influence of time. And after Santanu had ascended to heaven, Bhishma, placing himself under the command of Satyavati, installed that suppressor of foes, viz. Chitrangada on the throne, who, having soon vanquished by his prowess all monarchs, considered not any man as his equal. And beholding that he could vanquish men, asuras, and the very gods, his namesake, the powerful king of the Gandharvas approached him for an encounter. Between that Gandharva and that foremost one of the Kurus, who were both very powerful, there occurred on the field of Kurukshetra a fierce combat which lasted full 3 years on the banks of the Saraswati. In that terrible encounter characterized by thick showers of weapons and in which the combatants grind each other fiercely, the Gandharva, who had greater prowess or strategic deception, slew the Kuru prince. Having slain Chitrangada, that first of men and oppressor of foes, the Gandharv ascended to heaven. When that tiger among men endued with great prowess was slain, Bhishma, the son of Santanu, performed, O king, all his obsequies. He then installed the boy Vichitravirya of mighty arms, still in his minority, on the throne of the Kurus. And Vichitravirya, placing himself under the command of Bhishma, ruled the ancestral kingdom. And he adored Santanu's son Bhishma, who was conversant with all the rules of religion and law. So, indeed, Bhishma also protected him that was so obedient to the dictates of duty. Thus ends the 101st section in the Shambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 101, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, O thou of Kuru's race, after Chitrangada was slain, his successor Vichitravirya being a minor, Bhishma ruled the kingdom, placing himself under the command of Satyavati. When he saw that his brother, who was the foremost of intelligent men, attained to majority, Bhisma set his heart upon marrying Vichitravirya. At this time he heard that the 3 daughters of the king of Kashi, all equal in beauty to the Apsaras themselves, would be married on the same occasion, selecting their husbands at a self-choice ceremony. Then that foremost of Ka warriors, that vanquisher of all foes, at the command of his mother, went to the city of Varanasi in a single chariot. There Bhishma, the son of Santanu, saw that innumerable monarchs had come from all directions, and there he also saw those 3 maidens that would select their own husbands. And when the assembled kings were each being mentioned by name, Bhishma chose those maidens, on behalf of his brother. And taking them upon his chariot, Bhishma, that first of smiters in battle, addressed the kings, O monarch, and said in a voice deep as the roar of the clouds, the wise have directed that when an accomplished person has been invited, a maiden may be bestowed on him, decked with ornaments and along with many valuable presents. Others again may bestow their daughters by accepting a couple of kin. Some again bestow their daughters by taking a fixed sum, and some take away maidens by force. Some wed with the consent of the maidens, some by drugging them into consent, and some by going unto the maidens' rents and obtaining their sanction. Some again obtain wives as presents for assisting at sacrifices. Of these, the learned always applaud the 8th form of marriage. Kings, however, speak highly of the Swayamvara, the 5th form as above, and themselves wed according to it. But the sages have said that wife is dearly to be prized who is taken away by force, after the slaughter of opponents, from amidst the conquerors of princes and kings invited to a self-choice ceremony. Therefore, ye monarchs, I bear away these maidens hence by force. Strive ye, to the best of your might, to vanquish me or to be vanquished. Ye monarchs, I stand here resolved to fight. The Kuru prince, endued with great energy, thus addressing the assembled monarchs and the king of Kashi, took upon his car those maidens, and having taken them up, he sped his chariot away, challenging the invited kings to a fight. The challenged monarchs then all stood up, slapping their arms and biting their nether lips in wrath. And loud was the din produced, as, in a great hurry, they began to cast off their ornaments and put on their armor. And the motion of their ornaments and armor, O Janamejaya, brilliant as these were, resembled meteoric flashes in the sky. And with brows contracted and eyes red with rage, the monarchs moved in impatience, their armor and ornaments dazzling or waving with their agitated steps. The charioteers soon brought handsome cars with fine horses harnessed thereto. Those splendid warriors then, equipped with all kinds of weapons, rode on those cars, and with uplifted weapons pursued the retreating chief of the Kurus. Then, O Bharata, occurred the terrible encounter between those innumerable monarchs on one side and the Kuru warrior alone on the other. And the assembled monarchs threw at their 10,000 arrows at the same time. Bhishma, however, speedily checked those numberless arrows before they could come at him by means of a shower of his own arrows as innumerable as the down on the body. Then those kings surrounded him from all sides and rained arrows on him like masses of clouds showering on the mountain breast. But Bhishma, arresting with his shafts the course of that arrowy downpour, pierced each of the monarchs with 3 shafts. The latter, on the other hand, pierced Bhishma, each with 5 shafts. But, O king, Bhishma checked those by his prowess and pierced each of the contending kings with 2 shafts. The combat became so fierce with that dense showers of arrows and other missiles that it looked very like the encounter between the celestials and the asuras of old, and men of courage who took no part in it were struck with fear to even look at the scene. Bhishma cut off with his arrows, on the field of battle, bows, and flagstaffs, and coats of mail, and human heads by hundreds and thousands. And such was his terrible prowess and extraordinary lightness of hand, and such the skill with which he protected himself, that the contending warriors, though his enemies, began to applaud him loudly. Then that foremost of all wielders of weapons, having vanquished in battle all those monarchs, pursued his way towards the capital of the Bharatas, taking those maidens with him. It was then, O king, that mighty warrior, King Shalya of immeasurable prowess, from behind summoned Bhishma, the son of Santanu, to an encounter. And desirous of obtaining the maidens, he came upon Bhishma like a mighty leader of a herd of elephants rushing upon another of his kind, and tearing with his tusks the latter's hips at the sight of a female elephant in heat. And Shalya of mighty arms, moved by wrath, addressed Bhishma and said, "Stay, stay." Then Bhishma, that tiger among men, that grinder of hostile armies, provoked by these words, flamed up in wrath like a blazing fire. Bow in hand, and brow furrowed into wrinkles, he stayed on his car, in obedience to Kshatriya usage, having checked its course in expectation of the enemy. All the monarchs, seeing him stop, stood there to become spectators of the coming encounter between him and Shalya. The two then began to exhibit their prowess upon each other, like roaring bulls of great strength at the sight of a cow in wrath. Then that foremost of men, King Shalya, covered Bhishma, the son of Santanu, with hundreds and thousands of swift-winged shafts. And those monarchs, seeing Shalya thus covering Bhishma at the outset with innumerable shafts, wondered much and uttered shouts of applause. Beholding his lightness of hand in combat, the crowd of regal spectators became very glad and applauded Shalya greatly. That subjugator of hostile towns, Bhishma then, on hearing those shouts of the Kshatriyas, became very angry and said, "Stay, stay." In wrath, he commanded his charioteer, saying, "Lead thou my car to where Shalya is, so that I may slay him instantly as Garuda slays a serpent." Then the Kuru chief fixed the Varuna weapon on his bowstring, and with it afflicted the 4 steeds of King Shalya. And, O tiger among kings, the Kuru chief then, warding off with his weapons those of his foe, slew Shalya's charioteer. Then that first of men, Bhishma, the son of Santanu, fighting for the sake of those damsels, slew with the Indra weapon the noble steeds of his adversary. He then vanquished that best of monarchs, but left him with his life. O bull of Bharata's race, Shalya, after his defeat, returned to his kingdom and continued to rule it virtuously. And O conqueror of hostile towns, the other kings also, who had come to witness self-choice ceremony, returned to their own kingdoms. That foremost of smiters, viz., Bhishma, after defeating those monarchs, set out with those damsels, for Hastinapura, whence the virtuous Kuru prince Vichitravirya ruled the earth like that best of monarchs, viz., his father Santanu. And, O king, passing through many forests, rivers, hills, and woods abounding with trees, he arrived at the capital in no time. Of immeasurable prowess in battle, the son of the ocean-going Ganga, having slain numberless foes in battle without a scratch on his own person, brought the daughters of the king of Kashi unto the Kurus as tenderly if they were his daughters-in-law, or younger sisters, or daughters. And Bhishma of mighty arms, impelled by the desire of benefiting his brother, having by his prowess brought them thus, then offered those maidens possessing every accomplishment unto Vichitravirya. Conversant with the dictates of virtue, the son of Santanu, having achieved such an extraordinary feat according to kingly custom, then began to make preparations for his brother's wedding. And when everything about the wedding had been settled by Bhishma in consultation with Satyavati, the eldest daughter of the king of Kashi, with a soft smile, told him these words, "At heart I had chosen the king of Subha for my husband. He had, in his heart, accepted me for his wife. This was also approved by my father. At the self-choice ceremony also I would have chosen him as my lord. Thou art conversant with all the dictates of virtue, knowing all this, do as thou likest." Thus addressed by that maiden in the presence of the Brahmanas, the heroic Bhishma began to reflect as to what should be done. As he was conversant with the rules of virtue, he consulted with the Brahmanas who had mastered the Vedas and permitted Amban, the eldest daughter of the ruler of Kashi, to do as she liked, but he bestowed with due rights the two other daughters, Ambika and Amvalika, on his younger brother Vichitravirya. And though Vichitravirya was virtuous and abstemious, yet, proud of youth and beauty, he soon became lustful after his marriage. And both Ambika and Amvalika were of tall stature, and of the complexion of moited gold. And their heads were covered with black curly hair, and their fingernails were high and red, their hips were fat and round, and their breasts full and deep, and endued with every auspicious mark. The amiable young ladies considered themselves to be wedded to a husband who was everywhere worthy of themselves, and extremely loved and respected Vichitravirya. And Vichitravirya also, endued with the prowess of the celestials and the beauty of the twin Aswins, could steal the heart of any beautiful woman. And the prince passed 7 years uninterruptedly in the company of his wives. He was attacked while yet in the prime of youth, with phthisis. Friends and relatives in consultation with one another tried to effect a cure. But in spite of all efforts, the Kuru prince died, setting like the evening sun. The virtuous Bhishma then became plunged into anxiety and grief, and in consultation with Satyavati caused the obsequial rites of the deceased to be performed by learned priests and the several of the Kuru race. Thus ends the 102nd section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.